Good morning. Welcome to Viewpoint, the program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. Unforgettable. We had two politicians in my life this last week. The governor was here at the college the other day, nice little gathering. And last night I ran into our representatives from the 17th district down there, Danny Davis, and he was at the Honor Flight return home, which is the reason we're a little slow getting started this morning. Can't get the motor cranked. Mrs. Busby accompanied the old fellow down to watch our veterans come home from their flight, and therein lies my kudo for this morning, Mrs. Busby. Thank you for going down with me yesterday. It was quite an experience, wasn't it?
Well, it's quite an operation. It's really worth seeing.
Don't hide your light under a bushel. Use that microphone.
Oofta. That's on the fritz, Jim.
What's going on there?
I'll hold it. Go ahead.
It and I are both on the fritz this morning, I think, because we got home very, very late. But I'll tell you something, a lot of those people were in wheelchairs, and they get up before breakfast and go to the airport and fly out there and spend all day seeing the sights, and then get home way after bedtime. And it's quite a deal. They were very moved, to the man, I'd say.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
As you'd greet them and thank them.
Well, those that know me know I'm pretty enamored of the...
It was a heck of an experience. I thank you for letting me go with you.
Yeah,
and the Leesmans.
And we have to extend our kudos to our chauffeurs du jour. Aaron and Joyce Leesman. Another thing, Aaron and Joyce are vitally involved in that and have been for a number of years. And their son Adam is in charge of the flight as they leave and go to Washington. And Aaron and Joyce, they buy flags, little flags, little bitty hand flags, and then they take them down there and they cover both entrances, and they sell these little flags. They buy them themselves, then they sell them and give the money to the honor flight. And for weeks and weeks and weeks they've been doing that, into several years. And so they were our chauffeurs last night, and we appreciate that very, very much. We have a serious subject matter about which we want to discuss this morning.
And I think it's getting seriouser and seriouser as you look at the news.
So, we have a couple of guests. They came all the way from Lincoln, detoured, didn't know how to get here through Lawndale. One of them's an officer of the law, couldn't find her way out of Atlanta.
I was fine.
Go right ahead.
I would never be able to get here if I had to drive.
Oh, she can't get from Beeson to Burtonview.
I don't even know what direction to go. I'm totally directionless, but I guess anybody who knows me would attest to that. Anyway, these nice ladies have come out here to visit with us, and we are grateful to them. And we are going to be talking about this opioid. They're calling it an opioid epidemic. And Officer Fruge is with us. Her first name is Christy, but I think we have to watch to call her officer because I think some police person, someplace, should get some respect.
Thank you.
And we have a real dearth of that in our world anymore.
Not in Lincoln, Logan County, but in the major metropolitan areas, it's just got to be horrendous.
You should say thank you, God, every night that you're not in Chicago.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, really. And Angie Stoltzenburg. And Angie's been with us before. She's with the Logan County Department of Public... She is not with the Logan County Department of Public Health.
Well, she was up
She's
late
with
last
us.
I'm with Abraham Lincoln Memorial Hospital.
I know where that place is. Yes.
I love the Logan County Department of Public Health, but
she didn't get
they
home
cannot
until
claim
after
me,
midnight
or they don't want to.
So
maybe.
she's, her edge is probably a little more dull than normal.
I'm not hitting on all four.
Well,
And even when I do it, that's not darn good.
these ladies here were with us to kind of help inform both of our listeners that we do have a really serious problem right here in Logan County.
Yes.
And it's hard to believe here we are in Mayberry, so to speak, and that you'd think we'd be kind of somewhat inured and sheltered from a problem so serious as drug problems. But unless your head's under a bushel basket, you don't know what's going on. But apparently we have an ongoing and a daily problem.
Yes. Yeah. And it's not just Lincoln, it's all of Logan County, surrounding counties, Illinois.
And the known
everywhere.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is that the people's drug of choice today? Is that it?
I don't know if you'd call it the people's drug of choice. The problem with opioids is it's so addicting to certain people, and if those certain people get a hold of it, and it's almost like an instant addiction for them, and then it's a struggle to keep up with that addiction, to keep finding the pills that they need so they're not sick. Their body basically requires it until they go into some sort of detox rehabilitation facility. So
How successful are those?
well, it's really hard to say how successful. I mean, every person is different.
Sure.
You could send one person in, they go one time, and they never use again. There's other people that go to treatment 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times before
Fall right
it's
down again as soon as they get out.
successful. Yeah, it's a constant struggle for them.
And when they get out, what kind of environment if they go back to the
Yeah.
environment they were in, that has a big effect on whether or
And the
not
chances are
it's
10 to
successful.
10 if that's what you're...
Well, you're probably going to go, you're
Yeah,
probably going to
you go where you
home.
live.
And then you're probably
Right.
going to see the same people that you were hanging out with before, and it's hard to...
And that's a lot of the
Great.
problem that we run into locally, Lincoln, Logan County. People will go to detox, they'll go to a rehabilitation facility for months, and they feel like, oh, I'm a success story, I'm not going to use again. They come home, and our community isn't that big. Their family's here, their friends are here, and these are the same friends that they were using with, and it doesn't take long before they...
Back into the...
Right.
What's both the short term, the immediate high or what have you, and long-term effect on your body if you get involved in that?
Well, short term, of course, the biggest risk is death. We're having a lot of overdoses from opiate use, and long term is just like any other drug. It just, basically,
It'll ravage your body in time.
yeah, it
just
plays.
will.
Ravages you?
Yeah, it starts to make you make bad decisions on top of the bad decisions that you're already making, and it's just a downward spiral.
Angie, how's the hospital involved in this program? Because they're taking a big step towards getting involved in this and helping with this horrendous problem that we have here.
Well, we, back in 2016, it was February 2016, we started an opioid task force to look at the issue from every side and try to come up with an action plan where we could address it. So the ALMH Community Health Collaborative has this opioid task force. Christy's on it. We have lots of folks that are represented on there. And the action plan that we've done, it follows a 4-pillar approach that was started over in Europe, because again, it's not just Lincoln, it's not Illinois, it's not just the United States.
Worldwide.
It's a worldwide issue. So that 4-pillar approach starts with prevention efforts, harm reduction efforts, which are basically, you acknowledge that you have the issue in your community, and how can you avoid people, further harming themselves or harming their family or harming the community because of it. Enforcement, supporting what enforcement's doing, and then treatment, trying to address the very big lack of treatment that we have locally. I mean, we don't have, we have some outpatient, counseling, but we don't have a local detox center. We don't have sober living houses for folks that come out and, like we said before, need to kind of transition back into the community and get that support. So we've created an action plan based on all 4 of those things. And so we're just as a hospital, we know that it's an important and necessary thing for us to get involved in. We're just helping to facilitate some interventions in the community to help address it.
What do you do if someone has overdosed? There are medicines that you can give people, I know, that will save them if they're in dire straits. Is that what you have to do with someone who overdoses on an opioid?
Yeah, so basically, by law now, all first responders, including police officers, carry Narcan. We all have it on us. We get called to an overdose, and we're most of the time we're the first ones there because we're out driving around in our cars where as paramedics, they get the call, they have to get to the ambulance and then so we're usually the first ones there. We carry the Narcan, we administer it. Takes 3 to 5 minutes before it really starts to work, which is a very long time when you're watching somebody die in front of you.
Oh gosh.
Usually for Lincoln, by that time, the fire department or the paramedics are there and they can start working on the person. Out in the county for the sheriff's department, the deputies, it's a long time for them. And usually officers, we have at least 1 dose of Narcan on us. Some officers carry 2. Those for the deputies, I'm sure that they have to use multiple doses before the paramedics get there. But that's what we do initially when we arrive and find that somebody has overdosed.
And we've made some efforts to get Narcan or naloxone in the hands of just the community. We've held some trainings, working with some local resources to teach people how to use it and actually distribute it to folks. So, because the thing about Narcan is that you can't hurt anybody by giving it to them, but if they are overdosing because of an opioid, it does help reverse that overdose.
Addiction is a very difficult thing to pin down, and we all heard of Alcoholics Anonymous forever and ever and ever, and they do a wonderful job for those who have an alcohol addiction problem. Is there a group of any kind that for drug addicts to use that help? Go ahead, officer.
It's Narcotics Anonymous, basically the same thing. They are addicts who go to these meetings, and it's just basically like the Alcoholics Anonymous. They have meetings that they go to every week. They have a support system. They have people who sponsor them, who help them. If they feel like they need to use or they want to use, they can call their sponsors. They can go to these meetings, and it helps. And we do have some meeting places around town. That's really about the extent of our aftercare in Logan County is the Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous.
Well, addiction is an equal opportunity destroyer. You don't have to be, quote, folks who are economically distressed. Folks in, quote, high society, so to speak, to use that word. Plenty of addicts there. Witness folks with tons of money who in the entertainment business that are addicts.
Well, and across the ages too. I think we all have it in our head that people who are struggling with this are 18 to 25 or something. But the reality is, it's all ages, and
like
especially with opioids.
Age?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah,
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, and that was just discussed when we had our last meeting. The fire chief, Mark Miller, he has a mapping system that we use now for overdoses, and when we use Narcan, and he made the comment, he goes, I was so surprised with the age.
Yeah.
The average was, I think he said it was over 50.
Yeah, the average was, I think, and he talked specifically about a person that was like 60 something that they got there, and it was the patches.
Fentanyl. They had fentanyl patches, and
like
he
7
said,
of them.
multiple of them stuck to her body, and then she was chewing on one.
Oh,
So
really?
that's how strong the addiction is. Like Christy said, it's about trying to keep up with it. Once you start it, if you don't get it, then you get what's worse than the flu, and it doesn't go away for maybe a month. I mean, if you don't get
10
it,
days is excruciating is what, some of the people, the people that we've worked with have described to me as 10 days is about the worst. But you have the effects of coming off of an opioid, whether it's, heroin or, prescribed medications, fentanyl, something. It lasts about 30 days.
If you knew that you were going to be that darn sick and you did it to yourself, you'd think you wouldn't want to do that to yourself.
Well, the problem is, and what we are finding, like you said, it's not just people that are out trying to get high. We have a lot of people that have sports injuries. High school kids, they play football, they
had their wisdom teeth removed.
Right,
too.
Just little things, and their doctors prescribe them these opiates because they're a very good, painkiller for things. But there's a lot of people that have this addictive gene, and once they start taking it, then they realize. Well, they don't realize, but their body's telling them that, one pill a day isn't working, so why don't we take two? And then, within weeks they're addicted. And, these are good people that come from good families that, like I said, sports injuries, somebody has a routine surgery, their wisdom teeth pulled, and they're prescribed this, and then they're addicted. So it's not your homeless guy out on the street just looking to get high. That's not the opioid problem.
Oh, I think of a very well-known doctor in my father's day. We were in the dry cleaning business, and we knew he was an addict because his coat sleeves inside were all coated with blood on both left and right sleeves, and he was shooting himself. Now that was back in the 40s.
Yeah.
And a well-known doctor. And so it's an equal opportunity destroyer is exactly what it is.
Yeah. And so one of the things that, so we have a lot of tactics that we've taken. One of the things is to get those prescription opioids out of medicine cabinets. We want to make sure that people don't try to reduce access to that in the first place. Yeah. And so the Abraham Lincoln Community Health Collaborative, which is funded by the Hospitals Foundation, purchased an incinerator for the Lincoln Police Department, and now they use that, and people can take their expired medications, even if it's illegal medications.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, we actually, it's funny, we just talked about that this morning. Some officers, during our shift change, some of them said, can people bring illegal drugs and put it in? I'm like, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, bring it in. We'll destroy it properly,
Yep, no questions asked. There's a metal, kind of a mailboxy looking metal thing right outside the new police department, which is beautiful, by the way.
Yes, it's very impressive.
Great. But
even more than the old one.
But, we want folks to get that stuff out of their medicine cabinets, because what you don't realize is that Vicodin that was prescribed to you 2 years ago that's still sitting in your medicine cabinet that you forgot about, people who are really facing this addiction and looking for it anywhere because you get sick if you don't get it, that's where they're finding it. So we need to, there's lots of pieces to the puzzle, but one piece of the puzzle is get that stuff out of our community. And so if you've got that,
and dispose of it properly.
Don't flush it down the toilet and hurt the water, and make sure that it's really gone.
I didn't know this girl was going to be this smart when she worked for me years and years ago. She was one of our favorites.
Maybe.
Along with your daughter.
Well, please, yeah.
She's an alumni of the Gossett.
Did Sid's work there too? Oh,
yeah.
That's funny, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
We sent some good girls out, let me tell you that.
Yeah. We think that, and I have thought this ever since the word illegal drugs came into being, I've thought, well, I'm sure they have that in Chicago. But, of course, they wouldn't have it here, because we're just a little downstate town. But I'm pretty naive, aren't I?
Well, it was funny. We had the last meeting we had, somebody made the comment about, Lincoln being such a a great place to live. And one of the ladies from one of the churches that attends all of our meetings said, "Oh yeah, it's not uncommon for myself and some friends of ours to leave our doors unlocked." And I went, "No, don't do that. Yeah,
No.
don't do that." It's unfortunately, it's only getting worse here, and people are.
I don't know if that was ever a good idea. You know, I mean, people were still getting robbed even, you know, back in the day when people were leaving their doors open.
Yeah.
But
I wasn't taking those reports.
Yeah, now you know. Yeah.
we have an addiction problem here at WLCN. We're addicted to our sponsors.
Yeah.
And we have to recognize them during the course of the program. Go ahead, Mr. Ash.
What?
Good morning. Welcome back to Viewpoint, your program of politicians, perspectives, and personalities, or whatever else it is. Don't make light of this subject matter this morning. We have with us Patrolman Fruge, who I find very difficult. She's been with the police department as long as she tells me she has. And our alumni of Gossett's Cleaners, Angie Churchill,
Class of 93
Stoltzenburg.
or whatever, when I stopped working there.
Subject matter this morning, of course, is addiction. Principally, we're talking about opiates. Addiction is addiction, whether it's some people are work addicts. Happily, that's a good trait within reason. But addiction is a terrible thing, and and it knows no bounds. It respects nobody, no income. It's just a terrible problem. And here we find that we're sitting here in Mayberry, Logan County, and we think we'd be somewhat insulated and inured from having those problems. But unfortunately, we're on the highway between Chicago and St. Louis, and the bottom line, of course, is money. And the people who push this stuff make tons of money, and they could care less whose lives they destroy.
Right.
Is it an expensive hobby for people who take it up?
Is
it pretty pricey?
It's expensive because they get to a point where they can never have enough. So
And sometimes they do anything to get the money.
Right. So they're in constant search for pills, money to get their pills or money to get their heroin. And this is when, for us, from a law enforcement standpoint, this is when we start seeing people's houses getting broke into, or I don't know how many reports our department has taken from grandparents that say, my granddaughter or my grandson, whoever, drained my life savings, using this, or took family heirlooms jewelry that belonged to my great grandmother, things like this, and they'll take pennies for it.
They don't care. They don't. They want the money. They need the money.
Their body is telling them that they have to have this drug, and they'll do whatever it takes. This is one of the big reasons that we're pushing for people to go through their medicine cabinets and dispose of their medicines properly, their medications that have been sitting there for months or years. You may have had a surgery 3 years ago that you were prescribed medications, and you think, well, it's not doing any harm, it's not taking up any room. Then a niece, a nephew, a grandchild, whoever comes into your house, and they bring a friend, and maybe them or their friends, whatever, somebody's addicted, they go to use your bathroom and they start going through your cabinets, they get a hold of it, and they can take the pills and put the bottle back, and you may never know that those pills are gone. So that's why we're pushing so hard to get these pills out of your cabinets and get them disposed of properly.
And I suppose you can just kiss your professional or workaday life goodbye. You probably can't function well enough to keep a job.
I think you're surprised at how well people can, if they get what they need, how well people do keep it together during the day. Because once you get that, you're not always nodding off and looking high and looking. I think you get kind of
a lot of time, and addicts, they will tell you, I take what I can to stay healthy.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
because if they don't take what they need, what their body needs, then they're sick. The flu times 100.
And does that need escalate to or not?
It just becomes more and more, and a lot of times it's hard for them to get the pills that they need, and that's when they make the transition into heroin. Heroin is it's cheaper than finding prescription medication, and unfortunately it's just easier to get for a lot of people. So then they turn to heroin, and that's when it really starts. The addiction just really takes over their life.
648-5510. Somebody out there might, they could be like me. They might have a grandson that's addicted. They might have some questions for Angie Stoltzenburg and patrolwoman, should say that, or Officer Fruge.
Like I said, I answered anything.
you don't care about that gender.
You'd be surprised.
I'm glad we can make it a little light, but this is a very, very, very serious problem, and it came home to us within the last year. Young fella that's on the streets now, and you really worry. You worry every day about them.
It's a tragedy. It affects so many people.
And they're not bad. They're not bad people,
No.
And they do get to the point where they don't care and they're breaking in and taking whatever because they feel like they have to, and they don't care in that moment.
Yeah, you gotta wonder
addiction,
why.
But they're not bad people.
This young kid was never given any prescription ready. You got to wonder why. There's something weak in his character somewhere, and someone got him to try it, and now he's hooked. Yeah. And it's a terrible thing.
Well, one thing that I'd like to touch base on when it comes to someone who is addicted, through the task force, we started kind of my baby, I guess I'd say, a Safe Passages program through the Lincoln Police Department, where anyone with an addiction, it doesn't matter if it's alcohol, cocaine, methamphetamines, heroin, opiates, anything, they can come to the police department. We get them into treatment immediately. We went live October of last year, and we've had 13 people come in, and we've successfully gotten all 13 into treatment. If they need detox, which if you're an opiate user, you're going to need detox, we'll send them to a detox facility, and they have healthy detox where they're not, sitting in their living room trying to detox on their own, or, worst case scenario, sitting in the jail detoxing. So we send them to a facility, healthy detox. Once they've detoxed, then they go to a long-term rehabilitation facility. Like I said, 13 people since October. It doesn't seem like a huge number, but for us, it's a big number.
So those are people who probably wouldn't have accessed treatment at all.
No.
If it wasn't for the Lincoln Police Department and Christy taking that on.
We do everything. I mean, we fill out all the paperwork. We call the facilities. We have a list of volunteers that will drive these people from the police department to the facilities. We do everything. So
and you don't be intimidated to go because it's the police department.
Yeah,
because
we get a lot of that.
Yes, don't be intimidated by that, because
we're not trying to trick anyone.
They don't want to. I mean, if you're dealing drugs, I think you're interested in taking care of those people. But if it's a person who is just addicted, even if you bring the drugs with you, no questions asked. They'll dispose of it.
Someone could just walk in and say, I'm done. I don't want to use it anymore. Here's my drugs. Here's my needles. Here's my paraphernalia, whatever. Here you go. We will dispose of it properly in our incinerator, and then we will get them into treatment. We're no criminal charges. We're not going to charge them criminally for being an addict. We just want to get people help, because the way we look at it is the more people we can help, the less that our entire community suffers, because it's a community problem. It's not just an addict's problem. It's not a police problem. It's everybody's problem on some level.
And just having the hope that there's a place to go, that is amazing progress since we started the task force in February 2016. Imagine just when you're going through any kind of health issue and you have to figure out and navigate what insurance and all that, who should I go to? It's that complicated, if not more, when you're dealing with an addiction, because which organization is going to take your insurance? Who has a bed that's empty for you? What kind
what
of
if you
treatment
don't
do you
have
need?
insurance?
Yeah, if you don't have it. So now you've got somebody who's, we call them guides, but somebody who's going to sit down with you and navigate that with you and get you what you need, which didn't exist before. So it's an amazing opportunity of hope for people who are just finally getting to the point where they say, I can't do it anymore. They have that moment where they're ready to make the change and they need
And
the
that's
help.
what we're
There's
looking
actually
for,
help here
that
now.
moment of clarity where they say, enough's enough. And 24 hours a day, if somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning decides, this is my moment of clarity, it's time for me to get help, they can come to the police department and we're going to help them. We're going to get them into treatment.
We're such a litigious society anymore that there are people who wouldn't stop at a car accident because they're afraid, well, now if something goes wrong, they're
I'll get
liable
called
to
in as a
sue me.
witness. Yeah.
Right.
So how does the police department come out when you're going the extra mile to help these people? They could turn on you like a snake too, just like anybody else.
Well, it's everything. From our standpoint, everything is safety first. So when these people come in, we have an officer that sits down with them and probably for half hour, 45 minutes, answers a ton of different questions before we even call in a guide. We want to make sure that the person is stable, that it's safe. We want to make sure not only it's safe for the officers, for the guides that come in, but for the person too. Part of the questions that's answered is, when's the last time that you used? Is there a chance that you're going to overdose while you're sitting here with us? Are you going through detox right now? Are you going to need medical treatment? And if that's the case, then we will reroute. We'll go to the Lincoln Hospital, have them treated for the symptoms that they have before, we go any further getting them into treatment. We want to make sure that everything is safe. So, we haven't had any issues with most of the people that are ready for treatment. They're not ready to cause a problem for anybody. They're reaching out for help, and we're the people that are, getting them that help.
Ladies, what's the youngest age that, which you're aware that somebody has a problem?
Oh, over my years, I've dealt with kids who are using drugs of some sort, whether it's marijuana, pills,
Whatever.
6th grade. I
think the
My
Illinois
goodness.
Youth Survey, so there's an Illinois Youth Survey that's given to 8th, 10th, and 12th graders every 2 years. And what we see is the first time that they've tried, and all of it's illegal at that point,
Right.
even if it's tobacco, the first time they've tried any of that is 13.
Yeah.
That's about
Really?
the average.
I've seen younger. It
That's
doesn't
the
mean
average,
that those kids grow up to be addicts, but I think that's such a strange age for kids. They're not
kinda neither
kids
fish nor
anymore.
fowl, are
They're
they?
definitely not adults.
Yeah.
They're
I didn't enjoy that
yeah,
those years.
they're
I remember.
transitioning, and it's hard for
awkward
them, and
years.
they make bad decisions. Whether it's they forget their lunch on the way to school, or oh, I forgot my homework. They make those bad decisions. We're trying to keep them from making decisions that are bad decisions that are life altering.
Yes.
Well, we hear about criminals going out of prison and coming back with recidivism, the great word there. There's a lot of recidivism in this addiction problem.
There is.
You get somebody who maybe they think they've got this thing whipped, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they're back on.
Right. And that's
you
the
can't-
problem
you
that
can't
we
fathom
see.
that.
I think that the addiction is such a physiological addiction. A lot of addicts, or I don't want to call them addicts, a lot of people who have addiction issues kind of refer to it as a ghost. Like forever, it's always there,
And they can be clean and haven't used in years, but it's always with them. That need, that want it's like they're not ever completely satisfied anymore, and that's what part of our task force is trying to teach people how to cope with that, and how to deal with the fact that you are always going to have this want. You're going to have this shadow, this ghost, and how to deal with that. Best case scenario for us would be to get like sober living facilities here, but that's a long shot. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
This would be a place where they reside while they're trying to kick this habit.
And they figure out how to live without being high. They figure out how everyday life works. They have people there that assist them in getting a job and keeping a job and making good decisions when it comes to who you associate with. That's a lot of people that go to treatment. When they leave treatment, they go to sober living facilities. Unfortunately, we don't have any in Logan County, so the people that we send in for treatment, if they go to a sober living facility, you're adding the extra stress that their kids may still be here, their family, and now they're living somewhere else to try to stay sober, but the people that they love and care about the most are still here. So best case scenario would be to get a facility like that here for them to go to once they finish their treatment.
And of course, it goes without saying, this is an economic challenge to our law enforcement officials, be it the sheriff's office or the city police office. They have to have people that are, as you do, this is kind of your specialty. You're trained to do that, and you keep on training. There's a lot of money involved there.
There is.
And you think to yourself, well, are we going to just let them go? Well, no, we can't do that. And but there's a frustration angle. Families experience that when they have an addict, be it drugs or booze or whatever.
Well, that's the big one of the big things that I struggled with when I first came onto the task force was I understand a lot of these people that are addicted, they can't help it. I understand that, but as police officers, we deal with victims, a grandmother that sits in front of us that's crying and sobbing saying, I've lost everything. My grandson took everything from me, and that's a true victim as well. And it's hard for people to understand. We got a lot of, well, the police don't have compassion for people who are addicted. We have compassion, but it's hard for us to explain, I understand that you're addicted to something, but you haven't had to sit and watch people who have to give their house back to the bank, or they don't know how they're going to buy their groceries or their own medication because somebody has taken from them because of their addiction. It's so hard. That's why it's such a big community problem. It's not just about the person that's addicted, it's everybody's problem.
And if there's someone in your family who unfortunately has gotten into this, it doesn't affect only them. I'm sure the whole family weeps on the inside every time they look at them, thinking, I wish this hadn't happened.
Or I wish it hadn't happened, or what could I have done differently? I know a lot of people struggle with that. And
the blame game.
And it's not, it doesn't matter if you're wealthy, if you're a doctor, if you stock shelves on Walmart, if you work at McDonald's, it doesn't matter. It's a problem for people in general. I mean, you don't know who it's going to hit, and a lot of families struggle with that. I feel like I've done something wrong. Why would they turn to drugs when they had such a great life? The drugs don't discriminate.
No.
What's your first step when a father or mother calls you and say, no, I don't know what we're doing, John, we just can't do a thing, we know they're addicted? What's your first step?
Well, it really will depend on the age of the person. If it's a juvenile, I always tell people, my job isn't to scare your children. You know, we have a lot of people that come to the police department and say, you know, little Johnny is acting up and they're mouthy and I can't get him to clean the room. We want you to scare him and tell them, you know, they're going to end up in jail. Well, it's not my job to scare children. I want children, if they have a problem, to run to the police, not away from us. So I'm not going to scare them, but I have a way of just talking to kids and explaining to them, you know, right from wrong. And I think a lot of it is just they look at the uniform, they know, you know, they look up to the police and they'll listen. Sometimes they won't. You know, if it's an adult that's suffering from addiction, I'm going to offer safe passages right away. You know, let's get them into treatment. Unfortunately, it's ultimately the person that is addicted. It's their decision on what they want to do.
You can't save somebody that isn't ready to be saved.
Right.
Patrolman Fruge, thank you very much for being with us today. Angie, we appreciate your coming again. She's always a breath of knowledge when we bring her over. Whatever the subject maybe that has to do with Abraham Lincoln Hospital, she's there to give us the information. I always try to close with a quote that I found. This is such a deep subject, and I want to treat this as certainly not trite by any means. It has to do with addiction and folks who have problems that they can't get themselves going. And I found out it says, as one goes through life, one learns that if you don't paddle your own canoe, you won't move. And that would apply to addicts who need help, and they're going to have to get their own paddle in the water.
Absolutely.
Thank you, ladies, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.